Hi, hello. I am Serena Saint-Sinclair, and welcome to Beneath the Bloom. Beneath the Bloom is an interview series, and this is a space for stories of becoming, of where we're from, where we break open, and how we choose to bloom again. I am a Persephone devotee, and each conversation models her myth journey through three stages: the meadow, the descent, and the return. Together, we explore the moments that shaped them, the shadows that they faced, and the sovereignty that they reclaimed along the way. These stories aren't just reflections, they're maps and mirrors. Wherever you are in your cycle, may you find something here that reminds you that you are not alone. So let's begin. Welcome on to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. So, I just want to talk a little bit about how I know Blake. So, I found you on Instagram actually, and then later I also followed you on TikTok. And you make like these really short, but very honestly in depth short form content. You do a really good job of fitting and packing a lot of information in there, but also making it very digestible. So, I love your content. And then I also saw that and I joined your online school. So that's like SKOOL. And you have a mystery school called the Gentleman Occultist, although you said that you're thinking about changing the name. It's not just for men, by the way. I did join.
Yes.
And I think it's a fantastic resource. I was actually talking to my coven yesterday and telling them about your school because I think it's a really, really, really great resource and it's free to join. So I'm going to go ahead and put a screenshot and put a link down below. So since filming this episode, the school that I mentioned has gone through a rebrand. What was originally called the Gentleman Occultist School is now the Ravencroft Society. The Ravencroft Society is currently the #1 occult study group on school. It's designed as a modern mystery school for serious students of mysticism, magic, symbolism, and esoteric philosophy. It's centered on disciplined study, ethical practice, and thoughtful discussion. This structure blends historical context with practical insight, so you're learning in a way that feels grounded and intentional. When you enter the platform, one of my favorite sections is the community board. If you know me, you know I love meaningful conversation. Members post thoughtful questions and reflections, and when you contribute in a way that sparks discussion, you earn points that help you level up within the society. I won't scroll through too many threads because I don't want to show anyone's name without permission, but it's genuinely active and engaging. There's also a classroom section, also known as the Cabinet of Curiosities. This is where structured courses live. You'll find full modules, live event replays if you missed a workshop, and a really in-depth digital occult library for deeper study. The calendar tab shows upcoming live workshops held over Zoom. If you can't attend live, you can watch the replay later. There's a members page as well, which I won't open for privacy reasons, but allows you to connect with others inside the society if you like. There's also a leaderboard where you can track your points and see your progress within the community. Overall, it's been a really solid tool for structured occult study and connection. It's free to join, which makes it an accessible resource if you're looking to deepen your practice in a more intentional way. If this feels aligned, I recommend checking it out. I'll see you in there. Down below. So if anyone is interested in it, like definitely hop on there. And did you want to talk a little bit more about it and what the purpose of it is?
Yeah, sure. I when I started getting more tangibly active in occult practice and in occult communities, I wanted an online space that was accessible for people to be able to come together and talk about their practice. It wasn't necessarily to create my own coven necessarily, although I do call my Gentleman Occultist school a mystery school, and I am working on a name change because it is very masculine heavy, and I want it to be accessible for all people. It's not just a male witch society. It's for every practitioner. We have people in the school from around the world, and people of different levels and backgrounds and histories. Some people are brand new. They just want to learn more and they want to find out what it's all about. And then we have some very seasoned practitioners as well. And I'm working with them to develop courses in there as well. So not only is it great discussion, we have coursework in there. And we have live events as well. We try to have at least a live event a month, and I'm going to be trying to increase that to 2 live events a month. So that's a little snippet of my school community.
And if you haven't seen it, you guys should definitely check it out. Again, it's free to join. And it's just so far, I've already started the courses and it's been an incredible resource. And there's over 700 people in it now. So, like, it's
Yes.
just, you also have message boards where people can post and have conversations. So, even if you are super seasoned and you know all of the information there, the community aspect is also fantastic. And yeah, I really enjoy it so far, and I'm excited to continue
Thank
to
you.
grow within it.
I'm so glad you joined too. It's good to have other seasoned people and people that are kind of public faces as well. There's so many solitary practitioners that are in the group, and it's fun when we get people that are actually engaged in a public way in the occult community to be involved. So yeah, I appreciate you being there.
Yeah, one of the things that I personally struggle with and still struggle with in the occult space is community. I'm also like an extrovert. So like I really I love people. I love connecting with people. Obviously, I have a podcast where I interview people and it's just like any time I see like a good opportunity for connection and community and sharing knowledge and resources, I always get really excited by that because I just feel like there's not enough of it in the occult. And so I really appreciate that aspect of your school too.
Of course. I mean, that was kind of why I built it anyways. I wanted a community where people can come together and it's not just, some secret mystery school. It was like I want to bring people together and there's a lot of people who don't know where to go to talk to people about practices that they're interested in. So it really is a place for novitiates to come, people that are just wanting to dapple a little bit to find other people to learn from because we all need good mentors. We all need community.
Hmm.
We all need people to kind of guide us. It's hard being a solitary practitioner and not knowing
Yeah.
like what books to read or what practices to do. So.
Yeah, and then also I feel like we could both be novices in different areas, and you're gonna have strengths, and I'm gonna have strengths, and then you can help
Exactly.
guide me, and I can help guide you. Again, I
Yeah,
just feel like there should be more community and more just alignment. Like we all love the occult, whether that looks like witchcraft, whether it looks like ceremonial magic, and anything and everything in between. I just wish there was more connection. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
sure. My name is Blake. I am the Gentleman Occultist. You probably have seen some of my videos on TikTok and Instagram, which is where I started promoting some of my material. I am an eclectic occultist, practicing witchcraft and some deity work as well. And very happy to be here. Thank you so much, Serena, for inviting me. And it's been a fun experience so far, being an occultist, and I'm happy to meet so many interesting people that are in the occult world as well. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate your time. So we're going to go ahead and start with the meta because I have so many questions for you. But first and foremost, like I want to know your backstory. Like who are you? Where are you from? And did you grow up in the occult? Is it something that you chose later on? I'm ready for your story.
Sure. Thank you. So I am from like California, born and raised. I had a grandmother who I would consider a witch, and she was into Reiki. She was into, hands-on energy work. She was a massage therapist. She was a tarot reader, really into tarot, really into crystals and rocks and she was one of the greatest ladies I've ever met. And I was raised a little bit more fundamentalist in the Christian denomination, Pentecostal. And so I remember some of my earliest memories of this battle between this Christian upbringing and the occult world that I was interested in came from like, my father not being comfortable with my grandmother bringing her tarot cards around and, doing her Reiki and energy healing and stuff like that. And so I always remember there was this, hinging, there was a little bit of a issue with, my interest in wanting to learn more about what my grandmother did as far as her practice and, teaching me a little bit about tarot when I was younger. And, my father being very against it. And, everything was satanic, everything was the devil. You're not allowed to read Harry Potter, you're not allowed to do certain things. And so for me, I was a little bit scared as well as interested in it because for me, it was satanic in my own mind. You know what I mean? And so I was a little bit scared of it. And I thought that, if you did start dappling in things like that, it was going to call demons and stuff, which is a really big belief in, the Christian fundamentalist thought is any amount of, if you watch a scary movie, it could invite demons into the house. If you play Dungeons and Dragons, it could invite demons into the house. There's a lot of fear and panic of the unknown. And so it was really ingrained in me as a young kid, and even watching scary movies, I couldn't do it. When I did watch it, I felt like I was going to get possessed. And so there was, um, my grandmother, as great of a woman as she was, I was still like, oh, she's kind of doing this like witchcraft stuff. But I was very fascinated by it, and I really enjoyed her tarot cards. And so secretly, she would kind of teach me, and she would show me cards and stuff. And um, as I got a little bit older, started asking more questions into my like young adult years and stuff like that, is when I finally kind of broke out of religion. I took some anthropology, religious anthropology courses in college, which really expanded my mind into different cultures and how their religions worked. And eventually started meeting other people. I joined a fraternity out of college, and a lot of people in that group were people who were practicing different types of kind of occult practices, sigil work, and stuff like that. They gave me some books. We talked about different religions and different practices. And so it started to become more of a common thing for me to look into things that I originally thought were fringe. And then I was like, maybe this isn't so scary anymore. This isn't as terrifying. And slowly, eventually, going through all that. I mean, I'll expand more as we go, I guess. But now I have a book collection of things that I never thought in my life I would have. I've gone to these gone through different rituals I never thought I would. I go to different, Gnostic masses and stuff. And it's so beautiful being able to see it from the other side and, looking back on it, I'm like, man, I was scared of a lot of stuff where I really shouldn't have been as scared.
What was the first magical moment you remember witnessing or doing?
Oh my goodness. First magical moment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, going back to my grandmother, she had a gift of like foresight. She would say certain things and then they would absolutely come to fruition. And there was one instance that really strikes me from my childhood again, where she basically told us, like, hey, be very careful driving. You're gonna get into a car accident. And my mom was like, what are you talking about? We're going to be fine. It'll be fine. And so we left. And sure enough, on our way back, someone came into our lane on the freeway as we were driving on the highway as we were driving back home. And she had to swerve out of the way and off the road to not get hit by this guy. And because she was like hyper vigilant behind the wheel, I definitely saw that as like, wow, my grandma is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I was blown away, and so I was like, there's got to be something about this. And what's interesting is, when you're told that anything that isn't Christian is satanic, even things like those divine gifts, right? Like I really think my grandmother had a divine gift. And some people would be like, oh, that's satanic or that doesn't come from God. And even as a kid, I was like, well, what's the difference? Like she's receiving this gift where she's able to do certain things and say certain things. And you're telling me that that isn't like from God? Like how does any other entity give those types of powers? You know what I mean? So
I think that's
Yeah,
interesting too, especially from like a Christian point of view, because it's like if we're looking at it through a Christian lens, like God created me, I was created in his vision, like I am a child of God. So it's interesting to me when like how do we decide like what is a God-given gift and then what is like
yeah.
this, like you're saying like this is a bad gift or whatever we want to category we want to put it in, but it's like, but God created me in his image. So I always like kind of get a little bit confused about that too. And but I have a little bit of a controversial question. Do you
Sure.
think that the access to tarot is what led you away from Christianity? Like, do you think that in a certain lens, maybe your parents were right about that?
Probably, honestly. I
Mm,
think that, I won't say that it was like a gateway drug necessarily, but it was one of the first things that I remember as a child going, you know what, this isn't as scary as I think it is. It's probably more just propaganda trying to keep me away from this, practice. And when I started doing more research into like what tarot was and how people use it for divination and specifically she used the Rider-Waite deck, which is why I have such an affinity for the Rider-Waite deck now as an adult because I remember her card so vividly and when we worked on it together it was it's something that really stuck with me. And so I think that it could have been a gateway drug. It could have been something where it was a little bit enough of a this isn't very scary. What else out there is not scary that I think is scary? And where am I okay with exploring those other things that are not scary anymore, including like crystals and stuff like that? You're gonna tell me this rock that comes out of the ground is somehow demonic? Like, are you serious? That doesn't make any sense. We use it to power our watches and they have vibrations of their own and they have their own energy inside of them. So, it's a natural substance. So, things that come out of the ground, things that are natural, we like to put labels on certain things that are evil or scary or demonic. And it's like all of this is natural. If God didn't want to create it, it wouldn't be created. You know what I mean? And I think that's where like the kind of break from, my religious upbringing kind of led me into exploring other pathways.
Do you think that if you were told that like the tarot is like not bad, but it's a tool, or crystals are not bad or they're not a tool, do you think that there's a possibility that you would still be a Christian? Do you think that like being told that something is bad and then finding out later that it's not cracked your faith versus if you were given permission to explore, maybe it wouldn't have cracked your faith as much? I know that's a hard question. Sorry, I'm just curious.
No, I appreciate that. Honestly, I mean, I think I mentioned it in a comment that we had spoken about earlier. I wish that I were to have come out of the broom closet earlier.
Hmm.
I wish I would have been introduced to more of these practices at an earlier age. And I think I would have latched onto them a lot better because as a Christian, right, there's not really a lot of practice you do in anything. Catholics have a lot more ceremonies and they have a lot more rituals. And I wasn't raised Catholic, so I wasn't used to even from a Christian perspective, sometimes the Catholic ceremonies could be seen as evil or satanic. You know what I mean? Why are they doing these rituals? Why are they doing these things? And so I feel like if I were to have been introduced, I probably would have latched onto it more, or my grandmother would have been more of a mentor for me, instead of this like spooky person who I loved and who came around and oh, but I can't talk to you about this stuff that is really fascinating, but
Yeah, she sounds like a really cool lady.
she was awesome. She was definitely one of my best friends.
So when did your deconstruction from Christianity start? Was it with the fraternity or?
I started it in college, and it was after taking some, I took a few, like I said, religious anthropology courses. I learned about other cultures. We talked about Christianity several times, and I started to learn a little bit more about the history and origin of Christianity. And I think YouTube didn't help at all as well. When I started having my own personal questions, not only did I do a lot of research, I watched so many YouTube videos that talked about like biblical history. They talked about how certain things don't make sense, especially like the concept of young Earth creationism, where the world is only 6,000 years old, and completely, finding scientific videos that completely dunk on those ideas. And I've always been a fan of like science as well. Yeah, I was interested in science. I loved dinosaurs and stuff like that. And so, as a kid and then growing into an adult, trying to reconcile, okay, well, where do dinosaurs fit in the biblical history? How does that work? Were there, some people say, oh yeah, there were dinosaurs on Noah's Ark and stuff. And so, you get to a point where you can't reconcile the narrative anymore with logic. And you start to finally just go, wow, I guess that just isn't true. It doesn't make enough sense to counteract the mountains of evidence that say that this is wrong. And so after college is when that kind of the fractures in the foundation started, and more water just kept getting into those fractures. I learned more about like revelation, right? The concept of the rapture was a big deal for me. I was terrified of the concept of the rapture. And for people watching who may not know what the rapture is a biblical concept of the second coming of Christ. And at some point in the future, we have no idea when he will appear. He will call all of his followers up to heaven in the blink of an eye, in an instant. All of his followers will be up to heaven to meet him. And the rest of the non believers will be stuck on planet Earth in a time called the tribulation, which lasts 7 years. And it is a time of turmoil and chaos, and basically Satan takes over the planet and everything gets destroyed before God finally comes back and kills off all the demons with the archangels and stuff. And so I remember being told this story when I was a kid too, and just going, this sounds terrifying. And you constantly are wondering in the back of your head, am I doing enough to prove to God that I merit going to heaven? Am I going to get left behind? And as a kid too, I was always told, the rapture is going to be it's coming, it's right around the corner. And having that, fear of like, well, I don't necessarily want to go yet. I'm a kid. I've got my whole life to live. Um, I remember that just being so terrifying. And then when I finally started to understand the history of the Book of Revelation in general, the guy who wrote it, he was this exiled priest, and he wasn't talking about this future apocalyptic event. He was talking about like the current political climate. And, the mark of the beast was gematria for Emperor Nero. And so I was learning what the actual historical interpretations were of the Book of Revelation compared to what the fundamentalist Christian version was. And so trying to reconcile, okay, well, is it this historical concept that is true, or is it this biblical this modern fundamentalist concept that's true? And again, once you start to weigh the scales, you can't reconcile the falseness from the truth.
Hmm. When you first started, so you've joined this fraternity, right? And like you kind of started dabbling in it. What did your practice look like in the beginning? And then what does it look like now?
Ooh, good question. So one of the first books I remember getting was the Book of Oberon. And I've talked about it a little bit on TikTok and Instagram as well. It was a book of Christian ceremonial magic from Elizabethan England. 1500s. John Dee was an active occultist at that time. It's in the Folger Shakespeare Library. It's a ancient collection of occult practices from higher. The thing about the occult is back in the day in the 1500s in England, it wasn't very easy for a lot of like normal everyday people to get their hands on occult texts. It very much was relegated to the aristocracy, and so dukes and kings and queens and stuff like that. They were the ones practicing Christian magic. And so it wasn't as accessible. But nowadays, we have access to countless books from the past. And for me, it was a kind of a safe segue from going from a pure fundamentalist Christian to going, oh, well, at least this is Christian magic, right? Like at least I feel a little bit of I feel comfort in it being Christian magic and not feeling like I'm being too spooky or scary. You know what I mean? Like I'm not summoning demons or anything like that. And so it gave me a little bit of a comfort. I was learning, consecration spells, learning how to make your own incenses. Um, and so they talk about other pagan deities in the book as well. And it's very much from a non-fear-based perspective also. Back in the day, when they talked about other pagan gods in the context of like Christian ceremonial magic, they weren't even scared of other pagan gods. They really couldn't care what your beliefs were. They each served some type of function in terms of your magical practice. And so learning about other pagan gods through this Book of Oberon that was a Christian manuscript of ceremonial magic continued to push me further into like, oh, okay, well, who's Hecate? You know what I mean? Who are all these other gods that they're talking about? Because I only know of one so far. So what else is out there? And so the book does a great job of not only teaching you kind of like ceremonial magic from a Christian standpoint, but it also introduces you to other pagan deities and other types of practice that were popular at the time from different cultures.
So what does your practice look like now?
Oh, that's right. So now let's see. I am a big fan of sigil magic. And so I love working with sigils. I love doing devotional practice with as far as like offerings go and stuff like that. I am very interested lately in kind of refining and practicing some baneful magic, even though I have never done it before. I feel like there's a time and a place for everyone to kind of expand their tool belt in the witchcraft world. And so, learning some baneful magic. I wouldn't consider myself Wiccan, and I know that in the Wiccan practice, sometimes baneful magic, the law, the threefold law, everything you send out will come back to you threefold. I don't necessarily believe in the threefold law. I feel like, as long as you do things with good intentions, you're it doesn't really matter what you do. And so I'm in the process of experimenting with baneful magic. I mostly use the occult right now as a form of self-refinement. I don't really use it to do too much outside of, kind of self-correcting um, myself and my journey. And so, offerings and gratitude and devotions and sigils and working with, um, you know, I know that we talked about your work with Persephone and stuff like that, and I'd love to hear more about that as well. I don't know if you could see it though. Right about here, I actually have my visage of Hades, which is my go-to statue that I have been doing Hades work and Anubis. I have a chthonic altar, which chthonic, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It basically means like pertaining to the underworld. And so I I'm a big fan of the concept of memento mori, right? Remember that you are going to die. Remember that you are mortal. And that earlier in my life was a terrifying concept to me. I didn't want to talk about death. I was terrified of death. And it was something that was very scary of a concept. And then when I started doing deity work for, this concept of memento mori, I use the concept of memento mori as a catalyst for how I should live a just and upright life. And it is a motivator for me to try and do the things that I want to do in my life because I know that I'm mortal, because I know that time is so short. And so on my altar, I have Anubis and I have Hades because they are powerful reminders of these concepts. Hades, god of, justice, god of material as well. He's the god of like the earth and material. Pluto is his ruling planet. And then Anubis, he guides people through the underworld and he takes them to the scales of justice, where you weigh your heart against a feather of Ma'at and you see, are you a just person? Do you get to go to the field of reeds, or do you get to have your heart eaten by the alligator deity? And so, these concepts to me are powerful ways to kind of like live your life so that you're in alignment with your true will and that you're constantly remembering how short life is and not to take things for granted. It's a reminder of, if you don't start doing it now, when are you going to do it? You're wasting time every day. You're not aligning with your true will. And so most of my work now, I guess, is dealing with, that self-refinement aspect of shedding shame, shedding doubt, and going to what you want to get out of life.
I think that's really beautiful because like it's this idea of death when you're growing up is like this fear motivator, right? Like they're trying to use death in order to like control you. But if you instead you're taking the same tool, but finding meaning and structure and, like just purpose with it. And I think that that's really beautiful. It's a really beautiful way to like reclaim something that at one point controlled you with fear and then using it instead as a tool. I love to hear that.
I what's funny, like it just came to my mind too. I remember the quote from, and this is super, super stupid, Batman, right? The reason why Batman uses the symbol of the bat is because he was afraid of bats. And now it's his, he wants to use it as a tool as well. And I mean, that's a stupid
It's
analogy,
not
but
stupid.
I see that, when I had my full deconstruction, I went through a really dark night of the soul.
Mm.
I had panic attacks, I had anxiety attacks, I had full blown like a break from reality for a moment, and it was really scary because when your whole foundation is built on a singular belief, and you feel like you have this kind of like divine protection because God has a plan, and you kind of live your life in this, you know uh, I'm going to go to heaven, nothing else really matters, I don't have to think about mortality, I don't want to think about mortality. And then you kind of go through a deconstruction where all of your beliefs are challenged, and the rug kind of gets pulled out from under you. I remember having like night sweats and panic attacks because I didn't know if I was gonna, I would psych myself out thinking I was having panic attacks. I was like, oh, here it comes, I'm gonna die. And that fear was also like, okay, well, if I die, what's gonna happen to me now, And so for months I was dealing with this deconstruction and trying to get over this feeling of fear. And honestly, I went to Buddhism first. Buddhism was one of the first things that I started practicing as soon as I left like Christianity, because in Buddhism, I found ways of eliminating suffering because you start to understand the impermanence of life. There's a lot of practice of impermanence, and listening to Zen philosophers, and Alan Watts was a huge influence in my life at that time. His lessons about impermanence as well, his lessons about Zen philosophy, about how we shouldn't fear death. He had so many talks about death, and I listened to probably every single one of his lectures. And it slowly started to, the panic attacks would slowly go away. The fear was slowly going away. I was getting into yoga. I felt like, nighttime yoga as a way of like calming myself down, because I couldn't sleep at night. It was nighttime was the worst because I literally would keep myself awake. And so I started doing yoga practice at nighttime, deep breath meditation, listening to Alan Watts lectures, while I meditated before I went to bed. And then slowly that kind of got me to a place where I was comfortable with more of not knowing the answers as much as I wanted to know the answers. Because when you're going through that, you want to know what the answer is. You're like, what is the I thought I knew the answer. I don't have the answer. What is the answer? I'm looking everywhere for an answer. And you slowly get to this realization that you don't really have an answer at all. And it's okay to not have an answer. It's okay to just be comfortable living your life constantly searching for the answer. And so that was when I started to look at the concept of memento mori as a motivator. And I looked at it as, don't let this scare you. Use this to motivate and fuel your life. And so that's when I started kind of shifting my practice. And I still, I'll still always consider some of my best practice early on to be like Buddhist practice. I wear a visage of Buddha as a necklace to remind me about, suffering and the concepts of just being comfortable with not knowing, and suffering is okay. We don't Happiness isn't necessarily the answer. Just be content, because happiness is just the opposite of sadness, right? You don't always need to be happy. You don't always need to be sad. You just need to be content. You just need to be present and okay with everything.
So I know that we were talking before I started recording too. You were talking about like self-mastery, and also like shadow work is really important to you. What point did like shadow work start coming in, and how has that journey looked like for you?
So, I started doing when I finally started realizing what shadow work was, as I was doing more research into my occult practice and stuff like that. I discovered shadow work. I have a number of friends who are in the psychology field, and one of them is actually a Jungian psychologist, and he's a licensed therapist as well. And he started putting me on to the concept of Jungian psychology work. He started putting me on to the concept of shadow work. And as I started to do more research into that, I was really excited about this idea of integration of the shadow. And, when we don't understand the full spectrum of our psyche, and especially if you feel like you have a lot of shame or anger towards parts of yourself that no longer serve you, it's very easy to want to cut out or push that away. And so shadow work and Jungian psychology kind of teach you that, these aren't things that you're going to necessarily kill inside of yourself. You're not going to get rid of all of these things. Sometimes they serve a purpose for you, right? Sometimes they're survival mechanisms inside of you that serve a purpose. The issue arises when you can't understand what certain triggers are that cause you to change your behavior based on the stuff in your life that you haven't integrated yet. And so I read a couple of books. There was actually one book that I transformed into like my own presentation at some point, and it was called Best Self, and essentially was, the concept of breaking up your psyche into two different entities. This is your true self. This is who you really want to be. And then this is the opposite. These are all your negative qualities. And you basically boil down the best parts of yourself and the worst parts of yourself into these two concepts. And, it gives you a lot of self-reflection to look at your actions throughout the day and ask yourself, like, am I being this person right now, or am I being this person right now? And so that practice alone of just being self-aware of recognizing your triggers. Because I used to be a person who would get like road rage or something. I would get angry at certain things. And nowadays I'm just like, I don't get road rage anymore, but going through the process of figuring out, okay, why do I feel the way I do? What is it that's causing those triggers for me to feel some visceral reaction? And even today, coming out of like certain types of religious trauma or still having those panic attack moments, shadow work is good at your ability to look back at those actions and go, okay, well, where did this trigger come from? Why am I why is my natural response to act this certain way? And how can I correct it so that when this happens, my actions can be different than what they currently are? And from there, I think shadow work is something that every person, especially people who are interested in occult practice, if your mind is muddied with all of this other garbage that doesn't serve you, and you're full of like shame or doubt or trauma, being able to have a strong shadow work process that helps you kind of regain control of yourself is really fundamental in being a better occult practitioner. Because if you're going into rituals with your head full of junk, and you're not able to put certain things away while you're doing practice, it's going to confuse you. It's not going to make your ritual good. And so I think that having better self mastery over your own psychology is kind of essential, especially if, you want to be a stronger occultist overall.
What motivated you to start making videos and to come online and to become an educator or a teacher?
Oh man. S- I wore a mask for a long time, even after I deconstructed, because again, I still had that shame and fear of, especially like what my family would think. You know what I mean? If they knew that I had started doing other things. And so even though I was doing a lot of stuff in the background, um, I would cover up my altar when anyone came over. I would hide certain things when people came over. It was still very much a, hey, don't look at this other side of me. I don't want anyone else to see this except for me and my friends and the people that I'm doing this stuff with. And so even online, I didn't want to post anything. I didn't want to share any information about what I was interested in, because I had family members that would straight up like I have a family member who, she would see a book that had a upside down pentagram on it and would lose their mind because they were like, "Oh, this book has a pentagram on it. I'm going to buy all of these books and I'm going to burn them." And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Like, what good is that going to serve, But there's so much fear in just like basic symbols, you know what I mean? There's so much fear ingrained in it. The fact that I would even be considering practicing anything like that would just be this, earth-shattering event. And so I wore a mask for a long time, and at some point I was interested in like close-up magic. I would do close-up magic at family reunions. And
Hmm.
again, I had to stop doing close-up magic because it was like, oh, this is, creepy, it's satanic, this guy's, I'm just like, you got
You're
like,
talking about like card tricks, right?
card tricks, yeah, like illusions and stuff. And I was actually really good at it for a while, but um yeah, like the illusions were too spooky. And so it was one of those things that I kept repressing. And I started teaching my kind of course on self mastery with a small group of people in my fraternity. And as I'm going through this course, I'm trying to teach them about shedding shame. I'm trying to teach them about, trying to align yourself with the best version of yourself, and become the person you want to become. And while I'm teaching this, I'm realizing I'm not even living those same, things that I'm trying to teach. I'm able to, comprehend it in a way where I'm teaching it to other people, but I'm not even living in alignment with what I'm teaching. And so I had a conversation with my grandmother. She called me one weekend, and she talked about the rapture because the rapture was a very popular topic, even online. A lot of people were talking about the rapture coming soon.
Is
And
this
so
your
sure
same
enough,
grandma? Is
oops,
this your
sorry,
same tarot
a
grandmother, or is this a
different
different?
grandmother.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
One grandmother is a witch, one grandmother is a Christian saint, essentially. And so they did
Okay.
not get along.
Yeah.
And so my still living grandmother, who is on the religious side, called me up, told me that she was very sad that I wasn't going to be going to heaven with them when the rapture came. And I just remember like shaking my head because I was like, I don't know what I have to do to like just be cool in your guys' eyes. You know what I mean? Like I'm your grandson, and I get that you're like terrified for my soul, but every interaction that I have with you cannot just be this constant shame of not fitting into your Christian bubble. And I feel like that's kind of how it's always been with my family. I don't fit in the same bubble that they want me to fit in. And so there's always this sense of shame when I hang out with them. I can't talk to them about things I'm interested in. I can't talk to them about my fraternity. I can't talk to them about, what I'm doing in my day-to-day life, because if I'm not practicing becoming a pastor, then I'm not doing anything that they think I should be doing. And so after I had that conversation with my grandmother, I was like, who am I trying to fool? You know what I mean? It was one of those realizations that it doesn't matter how good of a person they think I am or how evil of a person they think I am. I'm still not going to ever reach that level where they think that I'm worthy of coming to heaven with them. And so that was kind of the the straw that broke the camel's back, because I had that realization. Why am I hiding? Why am I hiding at all? What is the worst that would happen if I just jumped out of the broom closet and decided to let my witch flag fly? And that was kind of the catalyzing moment where I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start doing it. I've got all these ideas for videos I want to film. I've got ideas for long form content I want to do. I've got ideas for courses that I want to develop. And I cannot let this sense of shame and fear stop me from doing it. And if I'm going to be teaching these concepts to, my fellow friends, I better be the one to embody that and live up to those same expectations that I'm putting on other people. And so sure enough, I was like, you know what, let's do it. I did some rituals to prepare myself mentally. I did some meditations. I did some offering devotions. And within about 3 months of making videos, I had some videos on TikTok that went mega viral, and I started growing a following extremely quick, and faster than I even foresaw. I would have been happy to have gotten 1,000 followers by the end of the year, and by the end of the year, I was up to about 80,000 followers, and it was mind-boggling because I was not expecting it, but I took that to my own self as I'm doing these rituals to align with my true self, and I am asking for divine assistance, and I want to live the exact way that I want to be presented to the world. And so when you're in alignment with your true self and you are doing the things that you want to do, it almost feels like you tap into this divine source where it just kind of pushes you forward, right? You feel this sense of weightlessness because you're divesting your shame, you're divesting your chains, and you're able to just kind of tap into, this is who I am. This is, my psychological, you're locked in. Essentially, you just get locked in all of the sudden. And so I immediately felt that lock in moment. And that's how I'm here tonight, I guess.
Yeah, that's such a fascinating story. It's interesting because I reached out to you on Instagram, and by the time that you got back to me, you gained like 30,000 followers. It's really wild to watch.
Yeah, I what's funny is I gained my following initially on Instagram, and I was using my like personal Instagram to repost my videos. And then I decided very quickly I didn't want to use my personal Instagram to repost videos. Because again, I got a lot of family on there. They want to see, other pictures. They don't want to see me posting videos about occult stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna create a new Instagram page. I had to wait a period of time before I can reclaim the name I was using. And I thought it was going to be a lot more of a battle to get through my Instagram growth, because I was already making waves on TikTok. But again, a couple of videos. I think the thing about some of the videos that I posted initially, one of the videos that really went viral was talking about how paganism can help save America, essentially.
Mm.
And the concept of that video was to talk about the control that fundamentalist religion has on our people, on our politics, how we don't care as much about nature, we don't care as much about the earth, we don't care as much about other people. We're a very hateful group of people, and one of the most common quotes you'll find in some of my videos is, there's no hate like Christian love, right? They always say that they're the most loving religion, and you really don't see it in how people act. And so I made this video about how we need paganism and the practice and the concept of being one with nature and looking out for other people. And um, I think that sparked what a lot of people who were already in the kind of non-believer realm were thinking. What else is out there where there's a lot of people leaving Christianity. There's a lot of people leaving religious practice in general. And my videos kind of tapped into what a lot of people were thinking. At least that's what the overwhelming majority of comments were. I've already felt this way. I didn't know how to word it. I didn't know what I felt exactly, but I knew that I wasn't happy in my religion and I'm looking for something else. And so I think, the concept of occultism, it gives people a way of looking into other practices that might better align with who they truly are. They just don't know it. They don't have words to describe how they feel. They don't understand what certain practices are. Or just like I used to think, it's all scary, it's all satanic, it's all evil, right? And so being able to come at my videos from a perspective of I used to be a Christian, and so I understand the psychology of what other people are thinking that are also leaving their religion. And how can I help them better realign with something that might work for them where I was floundering. You know what I mean? I wish I had a mentor when I was going through my deconstruction better, because I would have loved someone to help me kind of like realign myself when I felt like I was lost. So
Oh, I have two questions for you, but one thing I wanted to say in response to the paganism will save America thing, I heard this theory, and I think it's very interesting. This idea that like fundamental Christians, when you have this promise of heaven after you die, the earth and your life on earth becomes a test and it becomes something for you to use up, which I think is very interesting because, for me, I'm like, why don't we care about climate change? Like,
yeah.
why don't we care about the earth? I feel like this is something that God created. Like, is it not our duty to like, I mean, when I was still a Christian, is it not our duty to take care of the earth? But I heard someone explain, like, well, when you have heaven, you have this forever of resources. These resources exist only for you to use up. And I feel that's such a fascinating response to like why I see so many fundamental Christians who see the earth only as something to use and abuse and not as something to take care of.
Yeah, I mean you nailed it right on the head. That is absolutely one of the downfalls of the entire concept behind an apocalyptic religion. And people don't want to call Christianity an apocalyptic religion. It is. Jesus was a doomsday prophet. The concept of Christianity is an apocalyptic religion. It is about the destruction of the world. It is about this is a temporary existence, and we need to focus on our eternal existence. And I it's so damaging to not only the psyche of a person who believes this, it's damaging to our planet, because you're right, every resource here is just for us to consume because it doesn't matter. And the concept of the rapture as well, the point of the end times is that it is going to get harder, it is going to get worse before it gets better. And so anytime you see something that shows how bad things are getting, whether it's climate change, whether it's political upheaval, whether it's certain types of social unrest, it is just I remember even as a young kid, oh well, the end times are coming. Like it was just something it's like the
The prophecy.
It's a prophecy. Exactly. It's a never-ending prophecy. It's always right around the corner. It's always coming. It's always right at your doorstep, but it never is here. And it just keeps getting worse and worse. And, they see this as just fulfilling prophecy. It's all just fulfilling prophecy. So it doesn't matter even if things get bad. That's the whole point. And so it, that is one of the big things that I had to come to grips with as well, because I used to think that same way. I used to think like, oh yeah, this is just a proving ground to believe in Jesus, and then you get a free ticket to heaven. And now I'm like, I want to fight for future existence on this planet, because everyone should be on this planet and be happy. We can't have people who think that the world ending is a good thing be in charge of politics. They shouldn't be in charge of passing laws. They shouldn't be in charge of promoting concepts that damage our planet in the long run. And I think it's an easy way to scapegoat as well. It's a easy way to scapegoat how hard it is to give up certain comforts in life that we have gained through kind of pillaging the earth. And so, as long as you think that it won't matter in the end, you have a scapegoat for your own conscience. You don't have to have a conscience about it. Um,
And I feel like too, like when you're talking about your like shadow work and deconstruction and everything, why would you like not having panic attacks, I think would be more rare than like of course you're gonna have panic attacks. Like you're told like you're raised in this apocalyptic religion, like you're saying, that the end is around the corner, that your value is also, and I feel like this is a lot of thing what I'm hearing from you talking about your family is like your value is wrapped up in your spiritual beliefs. Like
yeah,
you as a human don't have intrinsic value.
yeah,
It's like if you fit into this idea of what their idea of what a Christian should look like, that's where your value comes from. And I feel like that is also part of the reason why we're having so much unrest in the US right now is like if you don't fit this mold, therefore it affects your value. And it's like, no, people have inherent value whether they agree with you or not. And you're just
yeah,
projecting your values onto others, but not only are you projecting them, you're also dehumanizing them in the process. And that's
yeah,
so painful and so hurtful because it's like, no, I'm just a human being too.
yeah. Well, the concept of like original sin is so damaging as well, because the concept of original sin is you're born inherently sinful, and you need the anointment of the blood of Christ in order to be saved, in order to have value, in order to merit some divine gift. And so that again, it's also very misogynistic as well, because they wrap it up into why like women can't be spiritual leaders. They wrap it up into um why women should be like subservient and stuff like that. I think the story of Adam and Eve, uh what's interesting is it's not even Adam and Eve. There's so many spiritual pathways that use women as a scapegoat for why something went wrong. I mean, I think of like Pandora's box and stuff like that. It's easy to say, oh, a woman caused all of this suffering to happen. And so, we need to blame them, or, it's a reason why they can't do XYZ. And it promotes misogyny, it promotes low self-worth. And I think that's another motivator for me, because again, like I used to have those same mindsets. And I remember looking at Facebook does a great job of reminding you posts that you made in the past.
Yes, so
And
embarrassing.
I remember seeing some posts of, oh, you said this 10 years ago. And I was like horrified by some of the stuff that I would repost.
Mhm.
I was like, who the hell had access to my Facebook page 10 years ago? Because it wasn't me. And looking today at like the person I was, I'm so thankful to have been freed of it,
Mm.
because not only is it damaging, it's also just it's not in alignment with what being a good human is overall. There is inherent misogyny built into it. There is, a belief in the temporariness of the planet, and so it doesn't matter. Climate change isn't real. Everything is a hoax. You deny science. You deny equal rights for other people. I had a gay roommate for a long time. And one of the struggles that I had initially was coming to grips with, having a gay roommate at first, because you're told, being homosexual is a sin. You're not supposed to, do that. And so for me, it was like a struggle. And he's, to this day, still my best friend. And I'm so glad that I was able to get over the biases that I had, because um, I would not have the same friendships. I don't think I would care as deeply. The concept of like toxic masculinity too. If you're a person who cries, if you're a person who doesn't promote yourself as exactly male and stuff like that. Um, I've always been like a more sensitive guy, I would say, but I had to bottle it up more because I didn't want to be presented as like effeminate and stuff. Crying at like movies and stuff like that. I've always been more on the emotional side, and it was um coming to grips with like being okay with things about myself that I originally didn't like, or being okay with people that I originally, thought negatively about. I couldn't imagine still it feels like prison. It felt like a mental prison.
Mm,
And you just don't realize that the bars are there. It's just
mhm.
you're completely comfortable with it because that's just all you're taught. And I sympathize so much with people that are going through that struggle, and I guess that's one of the main things that I want to use occultism for, is like it's okay to be the person you are. You have so much shame built into you, and it's time to let that shame go, and it's time to let that bigotry and those biases go. And you can't it's so interesting too, seeing people who practice like witchcraft who are still like bigots and stuff, like people I would consider bigots, and going like, how can you be a part of like a magical practice like witchcraft and then be a bigot and stuff? But people come in all shapes and sizes, I guess. So you're gonna have bigots in everything you
Yeah.
do, I guess.
Well, I think that to me, witchcraft is a tool more than anything. Like, I don't see it more as of a religion per se. Like, I think it's
Sure,
more of a
yeah,
tool. So it's like
yeah,
you can use it for whatever you want to use it for. Like, it's
absolutely.
I feel like witchcraft is inherently neutral, and like so whatever you want to do with that, like a hammer, if you want to murder somebody with a hammer, you can. If you want to build a house with it, you can. And that's kind
Yeah.
of like how I see witchcraft. So I think that I thought that was like a tough lesson for me when I first got into like the sphere. I was like, oh, everyone's gonna be cool. And I was like, wait, that's not true.
Yeah,
Um,
everyone's not cool. Oh no.
so you're talking about, like aligning with kind of your purpose, whatever. Do you believe that like we have each individual person has like a purpose or like a true will or
Oh my goodness. I mean, yeah, I think so. I think I don't necessarily want to call it fate. Um, I think that we do have it's kind of like the concept of an ikigai. In Japanese, I don't know if it's like Japanese mysticism or Japanese like spiritual practice, but they have a concept of ikigai, which is, you need to find something in your life that number one helps you get paid. It, benefits you spiritually. It's something that you love to do. It's something that keeps you healthy. It's kind of like, you're finding this crystallizing thing in your life that not only do you really enjoy doing, but you help other people with it, and it helps your overall well-being. And so I think really true will is finding your ikigai. And I think if you're not in line with your true self, if you have, shame that you just, you store deep in your gut and you don't let it out, if you're hiding a lot of things in about yourself, um, I'm a big believer in the concept of like miasma, spiritual miasma being a stain or something that kind of afflicts you on a spiritual level. And when you're not aligned with your true self, you get this miasma that builds up and it causes confusion, it causes anxiety. Especially, if you're working a job that you absolutely hate or that doesn't go, that doesn't align with your morals, right? There's a lot of people, and unfortunately, we live in a world where you don't necessarily get to just choose what you want to do. You really are kind of trapped with, working jobs you may not like and doing things. And it sucks because you find out real quickly like how unhappy you are because other things are dictating your life more than you're able to dictate your life. And I think that's where the concept of like true will comes in and, being able to shed miasma is hopefully you're able to do something in your life that gives you meaning, right? Like that where you feel like you have meaning. I don't think that each person inherently has like a fate or a destiny necessarily, but I think every person has something inside of them that really calls to them. And as long as it's, do no harm to other people, as long as it's something that's morally, horizontal, um, find what that is and align with that. If it's an occult practice, if it's a vocation, if it's a career you want to have, if it's a sport you want to play, whatever it is, find something where it truly aligns with who you are and let that kind of help guide you because you go into those like Zen states, you go into those alignment states where it feels like it's a natural part of who you are. And when you live with shame and you live in fear and you work for a company that doesn't align with your morals, but you got to make a paycheck. Like you're just going to build this grossness on you, and it's hard to shake off unless unless you start to find out like what it is that helps you shed that.
What do you think happens to us after we die?
See, 10 years ago, this would have been like the worst question you could have asked me. I would have just went in full on panic attack mode.
Hmm.
Um, I go back to Alan Watts. I love how Alan Watts describes the concept of death. And there is if you haven't seen it or your viewers haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend. Michael Flanagan is an amazing movie creator, TV show creator. He does a lot of stuff on Netflix. One of the greatest TV shows that I've seen in a long time is called Midnight Mass. And it is a show about this guy. He lives on an island. I don't want to give any spoilers, but they end up finding out that there's like some monsters on this island. All of Mike Flanagan's shows are kind of like horror shows. And there is a monologue in that show that talks about the concept of death. It's probably a 5 minute or more just straight monologue about the concept of death that I think is one of the greatest descriptions of the afterlife. Um, and I guarantee they borrowed it directly from Alan Watts. And the whole concept of it is essentially, once the bodily functions start to fail and your body goes through the active dying process, it's the concept of, I think that there is a universal consciousness, right? There's an energy field that is surrounding us. It's like I am a thinking person, but who's creating the thoughts compared to who's looking at the thoughts, there's something in our brain that we are connected to. I think that we can gain access to certain things like that through the use of like psychedelics or deep transcendental meditation and stuff like that. And so people can gain access to these, different realms. But to me, it's just this overall energy source or this divine universal consciousness where our consciousness comes from. It's like a massive ocean, right, of just energy. And we are a drop of energy in that, consciousness. And so just like, water goes into an ocean, it just becomes part of that gigantic ocean, right? I think that our consciousness kind of works the same way. I don't necessarily think that you're a individual spirit in a sense where you have your same autonomy as a spirit. I think you kind of just get absorbed back into this matrix of consciousness that is used to fuel other things in life. You basically become one with God, more or less. It's true reabsorption into the source, I guess, is the best way I could describe it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I think that that makes sense. I think that that aligns a lot with like what I believe. So to me, it makes sense. I don't know if it's going to make sense to other people.
I hope I'm explaining it okay, but
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
if
you're
you
doing
get it,
fantastic. I get it, and that's I'm the only one here right now. So
perfect.
what my last question for you is if someone's going through that deconstruction, similar to you, someone's going through that like dark night of the soul, what would you like, and even to yourself in that time, what would you say to yourself, or what advice would you give to people who are going through something similar?
You will get out of it. When you are in the middle of a dark night of the soul, it feels like this is the end of your life. It genuinely feels like you are about to, like you're either physically about to die or you are mentally about to die. And looking back at it, it was a short part of my life. You know what I mean? But when you're in that moment, it feels like this is going to be forever. This is all I'm ever going to feel. I'm always going to be anxious. I'm always going to have panic attacks. I'm literally going to give myself a heart attack. Um, you will get out of it. You will be free of the shame eventually. Have good friends at your side, have people that you love and care about because they're going to help you out as well. Um, don't lock yourself up. Don't sequester yourself forever. Give yourself abilities to go out and be with other people, and you're gonna get out of it eventually. It feels like forever. It's not forever. And once you come out of the cave, you're going to see just how bright and amazing the rest of life is when you are free of that. And I truly believe that.
You know, you say like you feel like you're dying. I would argue that you are in a way, like in a sense, like you are going through a death. Like you will never
Absolutely.
be the same person. And I feel like if it feels like a death, it is because it is. And that's what's so scary about it. But this
Yep.
idea that like you can, you know, like you can move on and be something else, like you will be rebirth, renewed, whatever we want to call it, I think is such a beautiful reminder for people. Like, yes, that old version of you is dying, and that's painful, and that sucks, and grief sucks. And recognizing
Yeah.
that is terrible and terrifying because what is on the other side of that but possibility? And that could be good or bad or anything and everything in between. But it's also so magical and beautiful that, like, there is this possibility you can be anything and anyone, especially when
Yeah.
you're talking about you're shedding those like restrictive, like you said, it's like a jail. Like if
Yep.
when you can let those things go, when you can let those really painful controlling things go and really kind of embrace the void almost, I think it's like it really is on the other side so freeing and so beautiful. And I love that that's what you're trying to do with your work because it's an incredible thing to do and it gives people permission to go through that pain. It sucks, but feel that and then reclaim yourself afterwards and anything you want to be.
Yeah. I think a lot of people there's even memes that I've seen about it, what people think spirituality is versus what it actually is.
Hmm.
And people see, this person on a beach meditating, and it's like what they think spirituality is, and then what it actually is someone like crying and like hugging their
Yeah.
pillow and stuff. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's what spirituality is. You're going through a spiritual reawakening is not,
Mhm.
yoga and meditation and fun and games. It's pain, it's sorrow, it's grief, it is death. And then
Mhm.
you get to do all that fun stuff afterward, after you've
Yeah.
gone through the healing process.
Then you get to go
So
to the beach and meditate. Yeah.
exactly.
It requires both. And I think
It
that that's
does.
part of the interesting thing about spirituality and social media is like the aesthetic way that spirituality is presented online is like, oh, it's like so romantic and like it's like a
Yeah.
hot thing to do, you know, and it's like actually fucking sucks. Like it
Yeah,
really fucking sucks, but it can be beautiful and it can be transformative. But it's not, like you said, it's not just meditating on a beach. It could be a part of it, but
yeah,
there's so much more, and accountability is such a big part of it too. Um,
absolutely.
Anyways, I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but I'm not going to
I
keep you any
appreciate it.
longer. So what are you currently blooming into? Where can people find you? Like, does your future look like? Do you have any cool projects coming up? People who want to know more about you, where should they go?
Yeah, thank you. Shameless slug, follow me on TikTok and Instagram. I produce videos. I try to produce videos daily if I can, in the, spiritual, occult, and post-Christian realm. I have my own online occult society. I use a platform called School, and I've grown that to over 700 people from different backgrounds. There's a cool feature in the school program where you can look at where people are located roughly. They protect your privacy, but like roughly where people are located. And we have people literally from all over the world that are there, from different backgrounds, different faiths, different practices and beliefs. And it's a very lively conversation. I have courses on there as well. And as far as my courses are concerned, I am developing slowly my self-mastery course, which does include, going through the severance phase, going through the shadow work phase, and then going through a realignment phase where you go from, shedding your old skin to, reclaiming parts of yourself that were lost. And so, hopefully working on really fun and empowering courses for people to go through is what my future endeavors are going to include.
Yeah, and me included, I'm also part of your online platform, and it's an incredible resource.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate you hopping on there and joining us. It's so fun to have you there.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate you. And hopefully, I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I really had a great time, and I look forward to future conversations with you just in general.
If you like this conversation today, feel free to like, subscribe, comment, make a sacrifice to the algorithm gods to help me out. I would really appreciate it. And may your path be sacred, your shadow sovereign, and may you always bloom wildly. I'll see you next time. What do you think happens to us after we die?
Oh my God.
You should
Oh
have
my
picked
God.
questions. You should have let me
This
choose.
was, oh no.
You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
No, oh man. Oh goodness.